Hey, Nancy.
Okay. Let's introduce ourselves and let's talk about why we're doing this live.
Mm-hmm,
Um, I'll go first. I'm a PM coach, and
mm-hmm,
I've been making a lot of, not a lot, but I've been making some videos
mm-hmm,
on YouTube,
mm-hmm,
like fireside chat videos meant
mm-hmm,
to um, offer advice and
mm-hmm,
share best practices and share learnings
mm-hmm,
with product managers. And the reason why I started making those videos is because I feel that our role as product managers can be very ambiguous
mm-hmm,
sometimes. We don't
mm-hmm,
know what is good, what is bad.
mm-hmm,
And it's always good to get other people's perspective
mm-hmm,
and learn from the people who come before us
mm-hmm,
so that as a collective we are evolving for the
mm-hmm,
better.
mm-hmm.
And I, PM role being such a what do you call it? Like we sit in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of it's a very cross-functional role,
Mm-hmm.
um, and sometimes we don't really know how to work with cross-functional partners. And engineering
Mm-hmm.
is one of the most, if not the most important cross-functional partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that we learn how to work with engineering,
Definitely.
and that is why I asked my friend Sanjay to come and talk to us and
Mm-hmm.
what share his perspective from working with how many PMs have you worked with in the past?
I think I've worked with more than 8 or 10 PMs now.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
so you have um, a lot of experience in how PMs and engineering should work together. So
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, so I'm glad to be the first on the live share. Um, so to give a little bit of background, I started off as an electrical engineer. I did my master's in electrical engineering, and then I worked in the wireless industry, working with different product teams, working with management teams and verification and validation teams as well. So I worked in the wireless space for almost 9 years before transitioning into a business development role, where I was managing search based teams as part of Zappos, which is an Amazon subsidiary. And my motivation behind coming behind the camera is to share my own perspective in terms of what are some of the things that I've seen people make mistakes with, what are some of the things that I've seen people do well, and
Mm-hmm.
give my perspective on how things could have been improved in
Yeah.
its own way. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Nancy.
Tell us, actually, it was your idea for us to do this live instead of what you and I have been doing in the past, which is get together, talk, record, and uploading it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think going live is special?
Um, I come from a very intuitive sort of background wherein I have had to work on problems and figure out how to come up with solutions on the fly.
Mm.
And when you try to come up with solutions on the fly, it gives you a different perspective in terms of the solutions that you come up with. And one of the reasons why we are doing this live as well is because the answers cannot be rehearsed, the answers cannot be modified, the answers cannot be
Right.
reshared, so that way people get an authentic advice in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what people are thinking when the
Right.
questions go around in a live session like this.
All right. I am excited for our chat. So, um, let's start with your top advice for product managers, the most important one, or the one that you want to start with.
I think the most important one that I have seen being floated around has been user empathy. I feel like understanding what the user is going to do when they get hold of your platform. So your product might be a platform, an app, a handheld device, but being curious as to standing in their shoes, trying to
Hmm.
understand what are some of the challenges that a user is going to face when they go about uh, dealing with or handling your product. I think that's been the best advice that I've seen floated around, and that's the best advice that I can give.
And
Yeah, as well.
how does user empathy help you engineer?
Okay.
Like, why is that? Why is it important for a PM to do
Hmm.
from
Okay.
the engineering perspective?
So, in terms of like understanding what to build, uh, the engineers sometimes need a guideline
Mm.
or a framework in which, given a certain situation, what are some of the possible steps, or what are some of the how do you figure out what the flow is going to be, and that perspective comes from a product manager. And I
Hmm.
feel like having that framework gives you the comfort to decide what is a timeline in which you can go from 0 to 1, where the feature doesn't exist, to the place where the user can interact and get what you want the user to achieve at the end of the day. So
And what happens if PM doesn't practice user empathy? How does that affect engineering?
so I think there are a few aspects to it, right? So for one, as an engineer, you want to make sure that you deliver stable, reliable software, um, and make a release and make as few releases as possible. So if we don't have enough inputs, or if we have the wrong piece of information on how the user is going to use the product, the implementation will not match the requirements, and it will create a lot of back and forth
Mm.
between the management, engineering, and the product teams. It might create even escalations, which will result in uh, engineers being forced to work overtime to
Hmm. Hmm.
produce the results that you're looking for.
Got it,
So,
got it. So if we're not building the right product, and I'm not talking about building it right. So
hmm,
there's a difference, right, between building the right product versus building it right. So if we're
hmm,
just talking about building the right thing,
hmm,
if it doesn't turn out to be right, then
hmm,
we got to build it again.
hmm,
Then there's rework. Then
exactly.
it affects engineering and it affects QA and affects everyone downstream. So
Hmm,
it's important to uh, get it right,
exactly.
as in get the understanding
Understanding,
right.
right? Yes.
And how can you tell if the PM has a good understanding of the problem space?
So I think as an engineer, one thing that I learned over the time I was working in engineering is, before solving any problem, think of the why. And I
Mm.
look at the product manager and
Mm.
sees how many questions he or she is asking before they come to us, and the way they sort of outline the request and the number of questions they've asked, and seeing how the outcomes that they are looking for is being mapped to the questions that they're asking as well. So looking at the questions, looking at the answers that the product manager has given, and looking at the flow of it, I get
Mm.
a sense of what is being worked on, and
Okay.
how to sort of improve that as well. So,
Are you saying you're looking at the questions the PMs are asking
yep,
when they're understanding the problem?
yep.
Ah, that's interesting. Okay. Is that documented somewhere? How do you know what questions they ask?
So I think this varies from place
Yeah.
to place. So in different companies, some places just have Excel sheets, right,
Mm.
wherein they're using a formatted document which they use
Mm-hmm.
over and over again, and they use the same sort of format of questions and find answers to it. And there are cases where people do more in-depth research in terms of the competitors, in terms of
Mm.
what is the product that they're building, and getting inputs from the different teams as to what are some of the guidelines that will sort of define a success for building this product as well. So
So does that mean that when PMs present to engineering,
hmm
we should at first kind of talk about this is how we went about understanding the space
hmm
before just say, okay, engineers
hmm
build this and this and this.
right.
So first explain how we arrived at the understanding.
Right. I
Okay.
think definitely. I mean, like I would love for them to showcase to me the amount of work that has gone into sort of
Mm,
getting to where they are, because
okay.
that gives us more perspective in understanding what we want to build and how we
Makes
want to
sense.
improve that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point because in PRDs, we probably spend a lot of time writing requirements, but
Mm-hmm.
probably not so much time
Mm-hmm.
writing about what we research, what we learned, what the
Mm-hmm.
space is like, etc. But yeah, okay, yeah, understood. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is another advice you have for product managers?
I think you know um, getting feedback, right, I feel like is very essential in terms of um, talking to the different teams that are involved in building this product out.
Mm,
Being inclusive, I feel like, is very important. And the reason why I mention this is because I feel like sometimes you don't know what you don't know. That's one.
mm,
And the other aspect to it is some people are closer to the product than you are, and
mhm,
they have dealt with it hands on, and by dealing with it hands on, I feel like they have a better understanding of what are some of the things which are still missing, and how we can go about incorporating those aspects into the product into a future release as well. So
when you say be inclusive and getting feedback from all team members, which teams are you talking about?
So I think from an engineering perspective, the I understand that there is a limitation in terms of the amount of feedback that you can get. You may not have time to talk to everybody.
Hmm.
So, I would suggest talking to the leads from individual teams, like the testing lead,
Okay.
the engineering lead,
Hmm.
the program lead,
Hmm.
talking to the leads.
Yeah.
And one other thing, one more step that people can take is like request the leads to get feedback from their own subordinates, so that
Hmm.
way they can be clarified in a deeper level, so that you get more insight from what people are talking about
Right.
as well.
What happens when the PM doesn't do that? Then how does that affect engineering?
I think I've seen people getting frustrated, right? The people
Mm,
tend to burn out because they realize that there are problems in the product that we're building, but
mm,
people aren't noticing that there are issues in the product that is being built. And that beforehand, before it even goes out into the market, or
mm,
or into the world wide web,
mm.
wherever that might be. And it also means that it is going to involve additional work to sort of figure out how to fix that, and do more of the QA cycle. So it becomes more of a loop,
Mm.
and it also takes away that sense of individual power wherein they lose that luxury to say, hey, this is my product, and I vouch for the functionality of this product, even though they know that there are some issues with the product itself.
Are you saying that when PMs don't collect all the feedback, there could
Hmm.
be holes
Hmm.
in the product? That's what you mean, right? That
Yep.
someone on the team probably has the knowledge, but the PM um, didn't collect that knowledge ahead of time
Hmm.
until we start building it,
Hmm.
and now we're noticing holes, which would lead to like rework,
Hmm.
which would lead to overtime, etc.
Hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is there like a process that you've seen works well
Hmm.
to catch issues early?
So I've seen certain gating mechanisms, right,
Mm,
wherein like people are empowered to say, um, when is a software production ready, and in terms of doing that, you can have gating mechanisms set up. This could be coming from the engineering team, which is doing a sign off. This could be from a validation team which is doing a sign off.
okay.
So empowering the individual teams to say, w- with the information that we have, and with the test that we've done, we know with a certain certainty that this product is certified, and we know that we don't see any
Mm.
problems with it.
I Yeah, I love that you said at the end of the day, all the teams want to feel conviction
Hmm.
going in,
Hmm.
and we want to know, at least we want to feel that we've done the best we can,
Hmm.
and we believe in this product,
Hmm.
and that's why it's important for the PM to orchestrate that.
Hmm.
Again, it's a team sport, right? But
Hmm.
someone needs to orchestrate,
Of course.
and it's on the PM to make sure all the opinions are heard,
Hmm.
all the feedback has been processed, and the final version that we're releasing is something that we all collectively feel good about.
Hmm.
Yeah,
For sure.
that's important for
Yeah.
sure. What is another advice you have for product managers?
So I think the other thing is like, understanding what are your desired outcomes for um, a launch that you're making. So making sure that you have measurable goals, KPIs, metrics that you've set aside to understand once a launch happens, you are able to granularly measure uh, if it met the results that you were looking forward to. So I can give you, for instance, so basically, when we launched a product, when I was part of Amazon, the our goal was to measure the number of clicks that a user had to go through to start from the search screen to the checkout cart, and we wanted to reduce that to 4 clicks. And when we ran the tests, and we did a lot of measurements around it, it seemed like our hypothesis was successful. But when the final product was launched, we saw that there were certain corner cases that we had missed, which in turn led to us finding out that we needed to be more thorough in terms of setting our metrics and the places that we are measuring the metrics as well. So
What happens when we don't set measurable goals? Like, how does that affect engineering?
um, I think one thing that as part of engineering we get asked often is like, how do you measure impact?
Okay.
So that's a big challenge for us, because we can only claim that we wrote so many lines of code,
Mm-hmm.
or we fixed so many issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's very hard for us to quantifiably say that we created this kind of impact.
Okay.
But for us to for that's where we look at the product managers
Mm.
to give us more information in terms
Mm-hmm.
of how you are creating that impact, right? So that
I
way we can highlight ourselves and you to sort of showcase that you are creating that impact.
So this shows, like on a organizational level,
Hmm.
what is expected
Hmm.
from engineering is what outcome did you create?
Hmm. Hmm.
And since that is the expectation,
Hmm.
you would need to lean on the PM team
Right. Right.
to help you
Hmm.
highlight
Hmm.
what outcome you created.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. I've also been in such environments in the past. Let's talk about things that you don't want to
Hmm.
see the
Hmm.
PMs do.
Hmm. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is like when you get differing opinions or suggestions coming in from different segments of leadership, right? If your product manager is not in line with your current leadership, that creates a lot of uh, anxiety in the engineers, right? Because you are always on the verge, or you're always on the crux to be delivering something new,
Mm,
something different, and creating that kind of impact as well.
yeah,
So it becomes a struggle when you are getting conflicting opinions and you don't know which one to sort of
I
follow.
see. I see.
Yeah.
So, what does that mean? It says PM says do this, but then leadership says don't do that.
Right. I mean, like,
Okay.
so, yeah. I mean, like, yeah. You have people. It seems like they're saying the same thing, but when you think about it, it's not the same thing. So.
Uh, so, at the end of the day, I feel like what you're saying is engineering just wants very clear explanation on what we're building
Hmm.
and what impact will we create as a
Hmm.
result of building this. And
Exactly.
when we build,
Hmm.
we want to build it right.
Hmm.
What does building right mean? It means there's not a lot of rework.
Hmm.
Like if we know uh, with certainty and clarity going in, we could avoid
Hmm.
rework.
Hmm.
And when we know that the PM has done their homework
Hmm.
and asked for all kinds of input,
Hmm.
process all the feedback, then engineering feels more comfortable and
Exactly.
engineering feels more confident
Hmm.
that now we have all the data we need to build the product right.
Hmm.
And in this case, when leadership is saying something different from the
Hmm.
PM,
Hmm.
it's putting engineering in a tough spot.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, engineering just wants to build it right.
Exactly.
Got it.
And
And
one thing that I just want to add was like we don't want to worry about certain things, and we don't want you to worry about how we are building it.
yeah,
The how is our problem,
right.
right? And we want you to try to answer the other questions,
Yeah.
so that way we don't have to worry about those questions while we are trying
Mm.
to build it.
So divide and conquer.
Exactly. Yeah.
What happens when the PM tries to get into the how? Then how does that affect engineering?
S- um, I think we have enough micromanagers
Okay.
already. I think we have engineering leaders who are trying to define where we're going. We
Mm,
have the validation teams trying to give us inputs on how they want us to sort of progress.
okay.
So it is a challenging minefield already when we have people trying to get into the nitty gritty, and I
Uh,
feel like it is a load off the product managers, because I feel like you already have so many other things that you
yeah.
are involved in. This is something you shouldn't be worried about. This is
Right.
something where you should say, okay, what, this is not my problem, right?
Right.
You figure out what your problem, how to
Right.
build it, and then you just that you
I
want to take, shoulder the burden on. So
um does that mean that it sounds like you've worked with PMs who really wanted to get into the how? Is that the case?
So there are a few cases where the PMs try to get into into the implementation aspect.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why comes from a different direction. It comes from external sources,
Mm-hmm.
wherein people say, hey, we want this feature to be implemented, even though this takes me to the next aspect that I was talking about in terms of the roadmap, right? Like people trying to sort of change the roadmap, and very frequently, and this happens because you are trying to keep the external vendor, whoever that is, satisfied with their requirements, and that sort of creates a lot of things going haywire in terms of the engineering domain. So
Got it, got it. And that's good to know because like I certainly didn't know the pressure that engineering is under. I mean, I guess I knew, but I didn't really think about it. Like,
hmm
I didn't think about, oh, the engineering leadership, of course, is all over the how. And I
hmm
didn't think that the validation team or the QA team is
hmm
also like
hmm
involved because that's not something that I really paid attention to. So, this is a great highlight,
hmm
which means there's already a lot of people
exactly.
like paying attention to the how.
hmm
The PMs don't need to do that. Like
right.
there's a lot of other people doing that already. So we
Exactly.
need to
Yeah,
divide and conquer.
of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
makes total sense. Makes total sense. What else should the PM not do?
I think I slightly touched up on this, in terms of changing the roadmap. But one thing I definitely wanted to mention is, um, there are certain PMs that I've worked with who build out the roadmap in the beginning of the year. When they are trying to figure out what are the things that they want to accomplish within the rest of the year. What happens along the way is you get pressure either from senior management, senior leadership, and or you get external entities pressuring you to sort of build other things which are not already in the roadmap. So how do you manage that? I think is a challenge that PMs have to work out. But at the same time, if you change the roadmap too often, one thing that you have to take into account is the time that gets involved in building the changes, and the effort that goes wasted because you sort of made changes in the roadmap as well. So.
Maybe engineering leadership and PM should be tracking
hmm
how much engineering time did we waste.
hmm hmm
And that should be a like demotivating factor
Of course.
because
Yes.
that's not something PMs really think about
Mhm.
either because
Mhm.
we're thinking like what's the big deal,
Mhm. Mhm.
and if we understand what the
Mhm.
big deal is
Mhm.
we would be more careful,
Right.
and if if we know what's at stake then we
Mhm.
would do a better job doing the homework to make sure we are understanding the
Mhm.
space more accurately, at least
Mhm.
with more conviction. Because sometimes we just want to experiment because
Of
we don't
course.
know. Like
Right.
who knows? We don't know.
Right.
Oh, let's try this. Let's try that. Oh, let's change that.
Mhm.
But sometimes we're not paying attention to how much effort is
Mhm.
like wasted, quote unquote wasted. Like
Of
not.
course.
I don't think it's a true waste because you're still learning from it,
Right.
but definitely a fine balance to achieve.
So, one other perspective that I wanted to give is like the engineering teams, they go about understanding what is the number of resources you need to build something.
Mm-hmm.
And to understand what you need to build, you need guidelines from the roadmap to say, hey, you know what, given this timeline, what are the things that we can build and what are the resources that are needed for us to be able to build this.
Right.
Now, assuming that there is a change in the roadmap, what happens is the engineering teams haven't sort of countered this, or like haven't understood that there is a need for a change, and there is a delay which happens with respect to delivery, and that causes a lot of problems in terms of them showcasing their progress as well to the senior management. So
That's true. And what happens when there's a delay in delivery?
so
Engineering gets in trouble.
definitely. There are other things that come into picture then, right? Wherein like you have to question if certain features are definitely needed to make as part of a release, and then it leads to more conversations either to your external vendors or to your validation teams to reduce their timelines to
Right,
sort of
right,
test only certain features
right.
because you still have to deliver
Yes,
at the same
yes,
time as well. So
yes. Oh, so that means we're really like pushing the QA team
hmm
to the wall, to the walls.
right,
Like they have
exactly,
nowhere to go.
right,
Because PM can change. Oh yeah, let's change the roadmap, and the engineering can say, sure, it's gonna take
of
two
course,
more weeks, which means QA has less
exactly,
time to
exactly,
do their job,
hmm
and so
exactly,
there's this ripple effect.
exactly.
That's very good to know. What is the number three thing that you don't want PMs to do?
um I think this is not necessarily for PMs, but I would definitely love for the PMs for doing this as well. Do enough retrospectives, because whatever planning you did, no matter how well you planned it, things don't sort of
Yeah.
go according to plan, and things change with respect to a lot of different parameters, and understanding even when the product launch is successful, what are things that can be improved, and what are things that can be done better to sort of put less pressure on like other teams as well,
Hmm.
is a valuable insight to gather by doing the retrospective.
And
So the issue that I have seen is people use the same template, right, over and over again for the different features that they have implemented, and the struggle for me is like, if you don't adapt or if you don't learn from the mistakes that you did previously, you're going to repeat the same mistakes again and again, and the longer you don't learn, these sort of incremental wastages will sort of surmount significantly, where it will create problems going forward as well. So
does it mean that mm, you don't just have retrospectives?
hmm
You
there
need
are some
to,
people, yeah, some people who don't.
well, I guess it's a two-step process. First, you have the retrospectives,
hmm
and then you figure out how to implement the learnings.
hmm yeah.
Sometimes the learnings can be hard to implement.
hmm
Um, and we are kind of like rushing to get to the next version.
hmm
And in my experience, sometimes to implement a learning, you kind of need a more sophisticated infra
hmm
to do something,
hmm
um, which can throw off the roadmap altogether.
hmm
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely very important. I know I certainly did not implement all the learnings.
so I think it is a struggle, which engineering teams have to sort of deal with as well,
Yeah,
because there are some learnings which they get from retrospectives, but you understand that there are limitations to how many of those can be implemented.
yeah.
But I definitely would say that um, educating people that you've done retrospectives,
Mm,
telling people that, hey, you know what, these are the insights that we got from the retrospectives,
mm,
in itself is a big deal because people
mm.
don't know.
Okay.
If you are doing the retrospectives, let people know you are
Mm,
doing retrospectives, because
mm.
not having that knowledge is also creating anxiety that people aren't changing or not, they're not looking into enough,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you
Fair,
might be doing the work, but you may not be getting the credit because
fair,
people
fair,
don't understand that you are doing the work.
fair.
So
By the way, we have Vincent in our chat room saying hi to Sanjay.
Hey, Vincent, are you still here?
This is really fun.
I don't know. He said a little while ago. I forgot to. I didn't notice the chat, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because we are very deep into the conversation. But this was super fun for me. I'm glad that we did this live.
Hmm.
Um, it just felt like, oh, Vincent said he's still here.
I,
Yay!
I uh, I don't know how this works. Like I don't know if people can hear us, or is it, can people talk as well? But
Um, I don't know. I don't know if people can talk, but I could show their comments.
yeah, really glad you're here, Vincent. It's been a while, and thank you for joining us. Uh,
This is super fun. I was very scared to go live, but now
mhm.
I feel a lot better. Like anything else we do, we just have to practice.
And yeah, here is hoping, some people got a lot of insight from this, and
Yeah, I
they'll
hope
learn
so
from
too.
this as well.
Yeah,
So
thank you so much, Sanjay.
bye.
Bye.